Rumors are running wild.
Really?
Oh,
I hadn't heard about it.
It's one rumor coming from a guy who claims to be on a radio station that no longer exists. So, okay, let's go from there. Ask him. What do you think, John?
John, what do you know from your end about this story that the Broncos and the Texans had, quote, preliminary conversations about a possible Peyton Manning trade?
When I saw the report last night, I came in and I didn't want to tweet anything about it till I'd gotten somebody or more than one person that I trust to tell me the truth off the record. And so I waited until I got three people that have been doing that, and two of them laughed about it and said that's ridiculous, and the other one just said it's not true. And, you know, what else are they going to say? They're going to say that, but as I told them on my radio station here this morning, I said, you know, you can believe me or not. If I got any credibility with you, fine. If I don't, that doesn't bother me. But I'm told by the people I trust that didn't happen. And, you know, I'm not saying the guy didn't have sources telling him that. And maybe it's true, and he's got a scoop that none of the rest of us can get. And I'm not saying he doesn't have good sources. I'm just saying my sources in the organization said it was not true.
Well, John, you and I and Woody have about 110, 120 years of experience covering sports and actually doing it. and actually acting as journalists, by the old definition anyway. Is it possible that there was a conversation between the two teams, but it just didn't last very long? And let's tell everybody how a lot of these conversations actually do occur.
But that conversation never happened. I talked to my sources. I think they're as good as John's, and I'm not putting you down, John. I think we both have credibility in regard to our sources. I talked to two sources that John may remember this. We had him on before. I had two sources months ago that said Peyton Manning was coming back. I wrote it. People didn't really believe it, but that's fine, like John said, if you believe it or not. But I have two sources that are very, very close to this situation. As close as you can get to this situation, there was never a conversation.
Well, and for what it's worth, John, I had two sources I talked to last night, both with the Broncos. And I also know for a fact from a very highly placed source, wink, wink, that when John Elway heard this story, he laughed.
So,
a lot of people tried to trace this here, but back to 2012. And for some reason, people who don't understand what happened are ignorant of the facts, think that Gary Kubiak doesn't like Peyton Manning, and that's not the case at all. Go back to when Peyton was coming off neck surgery. Texans were one of the teams on his list. Texans were coming off a division championship, their first one, playoff victory, and Schaub had been 8-3, and he had a season-ending foot injury. And he was supposed to come back 100%, which he did. He went 12-4, won the division, won a playoff game, beat the Broncos through 4 touchdown passes, lost a piece of his ear, outplayed Peyton, and they won. So nobody said anything about it at the time when it got out. Bob McNair said, because I remember asking him and writing this, he said if Peyton were healthy, of course we would have been seriously interested. But we couldn't because we didn't want to take that chance because we had Schaub coming back. We were coming off a division title. It would have had serious salary cap ramifications. And so they didn't do the deal. But it got out here. Everybody wanted to do the deal with Gary Kubiak, and that's not the case.
John McClain from the Houston Chronicle, who I consider the best newspaper sports writer covering the NBA, NFL in the entire country. And
thank you, Woody.
And has been doing. Oh, well, you are. You know that, John. And your sources are credible. I just got a question from one of our staff who said, well, why would they put in his new contract or put an addendum in his contract that he won't be traded?
No
I said, well,
clause,
that was a negotiating point. That okay, his staff, his people, Tom Condon said, if you want Peyton to take a cut in salary, you got to promise us you're not going to trade him. So that's how simple that was. It was not
to get.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the deal.
Well, and as one Broncos executive told me last night when I asked about the no trade clause, he said, you know what, that just might have been Peyton wanting a few things for taking a pay cut. It might have been his little insecurities.
So that's it. In regard to deals, are the Houston Texans looking anywhere else for, because the Peyton thing is total
No.
made up somebody
No.
trying to get their name out there.
No.
But are the Texans looking around at all?
No, last year they played 4 quarterbacks, started 3, including Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Mallett, and Tom Savage, and Case Keenum and Savage played 4, started 3, improved by 7 wins, went 9-7, missed the playoffs on the last day of the season. They know they don't have their franchise quarterback. Bill O'Brien could have had any quarterback came out last year. He didn't want that guy, because he knows what he wants when the time comes. So they're going to sink or swim with Hoyer or Mallett, because Savage is going to have another watch-and-learn season.
Hey, John, let me ask one more question about Peyton. Again, we've all lived through situations like this. We've heard rumors. We've had sources tell us stuff that might be true, might not be true, and then the definition of what might have happened or not. Is it possible that the Houston Texans, who don't have a great quarterback situation, picked up the phone, called the Broncos and said, hey, would you consider? And the Broncos very simply said no. And that could be defined as a preliminary conversation.
My source said there was never a conversation, so you're not believing me.
Now, anything's possible, of course, but they told me they had no conversation with Denver about this. The only thing they had, I think, a conversation with the Broncos about would the Broncos be interested in practicing against them before the game. But they told me nothing was ever even brought up.
Well, John,
Peyton, if they traded Peyton, they go on with Brock Osweiler in Gary's first season. I don't think so.
Yeah, there's not a lot of. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
but one of the reasons I ask is there is a report on the internet now that a station you do some work for, 610 out of Houston, is saying, yes, there was a preliminary conversation, whatever the hell that means.
They can say whatever they want to say. I went on the air this morning, did my regular show, told them about my sources, and I said, you guys can believe anything you want to believe.
John McClain, let me ask you 2 questions. Number one, what do you think is going to be the end result of Tom Brady?
I thought all along, guys, that he would have it reduced by 2, either in federal court or by Roger Goodell. Now, I'm not so sure, but I just can't imagine he would serve the full 4 games. I think there will be a reduction. 2 seems fair.
Number 2 question, and we appreciate your time, but this is one locally. You have served the NFL Media Committee for the Hall of Fame for much longer than I did. Are any of these Broncos going to get in the Hall of Fame? I'm talking about Pat Bowlen. I'm talking about Terrell Davis. I'm talking about the safety. Help me out.
Steve Atwater.
No, not
Atwater,
him.
Smith.
Dennis Smith?
No, the safety that's up. You know. No, that came from Tampa Bay.
John Lynch.
John Lynch, thank you. Yeah, John Lynch. They have a center.
Tom Nalen.
Tom Nalen. Any of those guys you think on the horizon anytime in the next 2 or 3 years, including Pat Bowlen?
Has gotten in the room, and that's good. And I'll tell you this, Jeff Legwald does a tremendous job, just like you did on behalf of the Broncos. Jeff's done a great job, and I think that bodes well. As far as Bowlen, I don't know. There's other push for Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft. It's going to be hard. Eddie DeBartolo. I would think John Lynch, to me, for as many years as he played, as many Pro Bowls he had played on playoff teams there, won a Super Bowl with Tampa. To be as hard a hitter as he was and to play 17 years and go to 9 Pro Bowls, to me, he's the one that ought to go in first. He's a finalist for the last few years, so I'm going to say Lynch would be the first of the group you mentioned.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys.
Really
Anytime.
appreciate your time.
I appreciate it.
All right, John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, been covering the NFL for 35 years. That segment brought to you by the Harmony Foundation, Colorado's premier treatment program for drug and alcohol addiction. It's located just outside of Estes Park. They've got a beautiful private mountain campus that is insurance friendly. So visit harmonyfoundationinc.com if you have a problem or you know somebody else that might.